Are beginning to reach out to each other, with Mikhail Gorbachev visiting London, Paris, Bonn, and Rome in 1989, and the barbed wire being removed between Hungary and Austria. A reporter who has watched this from a London assignment for 10...
Good evening and welcome to tonight's Cable TV Local Special. Joining me this evening, I have Ellen Unruh of the Outreach Office of Kansas Audio Reader, and that's what we're going to be discussing this evening, the Kansas Audio Reader Network. Ellen, thanks very much for being on our special.
Thanks, Jerry.
And I guess, first of all, to start off with, just what is Kansas Audio Reader? I know most of our viewers probably haven't heard of it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people start out by thinking that it's something to do with hearing, but actually we are a service for the visually impaired. We are a radio network for the blind and visually impaired, and we produce a radio broadcast for those who can't see to read or can't hold a book or turn the pages of a newspaper. And what you hear on our radio broadcast are readings of newspapers and magazines and current books.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. If it's a radio network, I know there are other FM and AM stations. Just how does the audio reader differ from, say, a K-Man or KMKF or KQLA radio?
Yeah. Well, basically in what you hear, you don't hear music, you don't hear commercials. All you hear are readings of newspapers and magazines and books. And it's the printed material that we try to bring to our listeners who are visually impaired, things that they don't have access to otherwise.
Okay, now the Kansas Audio Reader, how do you go about getting the people to do the actual readings for the network?
Well, most of our readings are done by volunteers from the Lawrence area, and we have about a large pool of volunteers, about 180 at this point, who come in and give their time to read the papers over the air or to record books, pre-record the books. And we audition them and train them, so these are volunteers that are well-versed in what it takes to be a good reader.
Okay, so now this is part of the University of Kansas system?
Yes. Our studios and offices are located on the University of Kansas campus, and we're funded primarily by KU and by the state of Kansas. So it's a statewide radio network for any print handicapped Kansan.
Okay, I'm very curious about the network, since you said it's a statewide network and it uses local radio stations. I assume this is quite an operation then.
Well, our broadcast originates in Lawrence, and then it's rebroadcast over 6 FM stations throughout the state, as well as over several cable systems, including Manhattan Cable System. And our signal starts in Lawrence, and then it's taken throughout the state by a microwave relay system, as well as some other means, and is rebroadcast all over the state.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. How does somebody in Manhattan pick it up? You mentioned it was on the FM radio, and it's also on cable. Can you tell them how they go about picking up the audio reader?
Well, they need a specially tuned receiver to get our broadcast.
Something similar to this one?
Yes, that's one of our models. We have a lot of different models of radios. Some of them look slightly different. If somebody's interested in getting the radio broadcast, they simply get a specially tuned receiver from us, and we loan it to them free. And for as long as they need it. And in Manhattan, you can get it a couple of different ways. You can get it off the airwaves, meaning you just need a specially tuned receiver that you plug into the wall and turn on, or you can also get it off the cable system, meaning that you take the receiver and you plug it into your cable as well as into the wall and get it that way.
Okay, now I might say that that's what we have here. We have a Kansas Audio Reader, and we have it set up, and
about to be sold.
What, all it is this is our cable line coming into the radio.
Right.
It's just plugged in, just turn the radio on. It's that
Right.
simple for it.
That's one of the nice things about it. It really is very simple to operate. There's just an on-off volume switch, and it's pre-tuned to audio reader's frequency. So what you hear is simply audio reader.
Okay, Ellen, now I know here you have with you a guide for the month of July. Just what are some of the programs that are on the Kansas Audio Reader?
Well, one of our most popular broadcasts is our morning newspapers, and we put out the program schedule every month. This is for July, as you can see. We start out the morning by reading the Kansas City and Topeka Capital Journal for 2 hours, and then we move into the 10 o'clock book hour. Right now we're reading a book called The Extraordinary Origins of Everyday Things, and we're reading that every day for an hour at 10 o'clock. It's a nonfiction book. The day moves in a similar pattern on a daily basis. So, for instance, every day at noon you'll hear USA Today. In the afternoon you'll hear papers from smaller cities around Kansas, and that's the time of day when we read the Manhattan Mercury, usually about 2:15 in the afternoon, as well as a variety of other regional papers. We read from the Kansas City Evening Edition of the paper. We read from several magazines every day at a specific time. We read from several more books every day, including a mystery, autobiography, biography, just a variety of things that you can hear on our network.
Now, is this network affiliated with any other network, or is it just sort of a standalone network?
Well, you could answer that a couple of different ways. We are fairly independent in the programming that we do, which is mainly original programming from the Audio Reader Studios. But we do borrow some programs from other radio reading services throughout the country. Audio Reader is what's called a radio reading service. And we do borrow a few programs every week from other services in the nation. But basically, we do a lot of our own programming.
Okay, now you say most of your readers are volunteers?
Yes. They come from a variety of backgrounds. Some are professors or students affiliated with the university. Some people are teachers, insurance agents, lawyers, real estate agents, anybody from the community who's interested in doing this kind of work.
So if they wanted to volunteer, how would they go about it, or could they go about it?
Well, basically you need to live within driving distance of Lawrence, since our studios are there, and we ask that people use our equipment so that the quality of our sound remains good. So if somebody wants to come in and volunteer, they can set up a time to do an audition, and once they pass the audition, then we will train them and help them choose their reading materials, help them pick out a time of day that's good for them to come in and record, that kind of thing.
Okay, so your whole idea behind this network is for the visually impaired.
Also, the physically disabled. Our service is for anybody who can't read regular-sized print because of a visual or physical disability, and that includes a wide range of people. Somebody who was born blind and has never been able to read print, that would be available to them. Somebody who's just suffered a stroke, who maybe can't move their arms very well, can't hold a paper anymore. Somebody who's physically disabled in another way and can't hold a book. Somebody who's growing older and is experiencing diminishing eyesight that often accompanies aging. Our service is very much for all of those people.
Okay, I see. Now, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'd like to go into a little more detail on it. Somebody needs or wants this service. How do they go about getting it?
Well, here in Manhattan, you could go to the library and talk with the librarian Lois there at the Talking Books department. She has applications on hand. Basically, what needs to happen is you need to fill out an application and mail it to Audio Reader, and then we will process the application and mail back a radio to the new listener. And then we put them on the program schedule mailing list, and so they'll get that every month as well.
So it's a very easy process?
It's very easy. It is.
Do you have any idea how many people in Manhattan presently subscribe?
I don't. I know that statewide we estimate our listenership at about 5,000, and some people have radios in their homes. Other people are listening through an in-house communication system in a hospital or in a community room in a nursing home or a senior center. So we have lots of listeners scattered throughout the state. But we estimate that we're only reaching about 15% of our potential audience. And we'd really like to expand our listenership because we know that there are a lot of people who would enjoy this kind of programming.
So there's a service out there, it's available,
yeah.
It should be used.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Ellen, is there anything maybe you'd like to add that we haven't touched on about the Audio Reader system?
Well, we've been around for about 17 years. We were the second oldest radio reading service in the country, so we have good blood in our background. I'm really interested in working with the people of Manhattan to see that they get the service. That's what my position is here for, and we really want to be available to answer any questions people have, any way that we can be helpful.
Well, Ellen, once again, why don't you tell them how they go about getting the service?
Okay. You can call Audio Reader, you can write us, and that information you can get here at the cable company. You can go down to the library and get an application from them, and you mail it in, and we'll mail you back a radio if you're eligible for the service.
Well, Ellen, thanks very much for being on our local special.
Thank you,
telling
Jerry.
us about the Kansas Audio Reader System.
Appreciate it.
Manstrom managed a local television and radio station.